after caving in to trans activists and watering down their own guidance. Well, earlier on today, I spoke to the trans rights activist and the founder of the Gender GP Clinic, Helen Webberly. Dr. Helen Webberly, welcome to GBN Tonight. Thank you for joining us. There's new NHS guidelines out saying that they can treat nursery-age children who believe they are transgender. I put it to you, nursery-age children can believe the moon is made of cheese. How on earth are they meant to have the critical faculties to know that they can change gender?
But I think we've got to think about what we mean by treat. And I really, really welcome this from the NHS. And I just want to say thank you very much. This is the NHS that we all know and love, where nobody is turned away on the count of age or ability or gender or anything like that. And what the NHS is saying here is that, yes, if you have a child under the age of 7 who is saying they are transgender, who is asking what gender means, if the family is struggling with that gender identity or whatever the child is saying, that yes, they will welcome them to sit and talk and go through it with a professional person for guidance and support. And I think that's a really marvellous initiative for the NHS. Thank you, really thank you from the trans community for that one.
Do you believe, against the body of evidence of science and against the legal rules, that it's even possible for a human being to change sex?
Well, it's not the legal rules. Is it possible for someone to change sex? I mean, if you're talking about chromosomes, XX to XY or XY to XX, you can't change that, no. But what we're talking about is gender identity. And that's very different from sex that you're assigned at birth. And gender identity is something that is deeply within. It's a very personal thing. And that, you know, is assigned at birth. We all guess that someone's going to be a boy or a girl. And actually, as that person develops, they can say, you know, that wasn't right. I'm actually a boy or a girl, whichever.
Well, I put it to you that these children are learning about transgenderism, thinking it's a good idea, and oftentimes the body of evidence showed us a huge amount of these kids are autistic. Ideas are planted in their mind and they think it's a good thing, but really it's a fantasy.
I think we need to be really careful of being respectful to people who are on the autistic spectrum or wherever they are. You know, being autistic is very, very different from gender identity, and I think we do need to be very careful. There's a huge
crossover of those who are autistic and believe they are transgender. You must admit that, because that's the reality.
There is a crossover. I wouldn't say it's a huge crossover. There is a connection, if you like. There's some people who have autism will also have gender incongruence and vice versa. But that link is nowhere near as huge as society would like us to believe.
Do you think it's acceptable for doctors, those who practice transgender issues, such as yourself, to be trying to get hormones to children, full stop, and secondly, without the permission of their parents?
I think, you know, the cross-sex hormones, gender-affirming hormones, hormones to induce puberty in adolescence are vital. Puberty is a vital process for all children, whether they're cisgender or transgender. And, you know, medicine and research shows that, you know, affirming a young person's gender really, really does decrease the risk of mental health issues and self-harm and suicide, and it increases life satisfaction scores.
But there's a growing body of people who've been through puberty-changing hormones and certainly gone under the knife, who are having huge regret. And the trouble with that is you can't change your body back. You can annihilate people's ability to have children. This is life-changing. Back to the original point, why on earth should we be subjecting any toddlers or children to a scientific process which can damage their lives forever and can't be undone?
Well, the great thing is that toddlers and children haven't yet started puberty, so they don't need any puberty blockers and they don't need any hormones. So what the NHS is saying is that those young children under 7 can have access to gender services, but actually the great thing is they don't need puberty blockers or hormones because they're simply too young for that. So what they need is support and love and care, which the NHS is really marvellous at.
What they could have is access to support to help them talk through it. For example, there are many people who could happily go on to be happy gay people that believe that they are transsexual, and they could have therapy, they could have support, and they could learn to love who they are, not want to change who they are.
Absolutely. And I think that's the depth of this NHS initiative is exactly that. If your child is talking about their gender identity, expressing issues, concerns, questions, bring them to the specialised gender clinic and let's talk through it. And I think that's, and as I said at the beginning, it's a marvellous initiative from the NHS to not be ageist in any way about the people that they're happy to see. And they're going to get the specialist care. That's what the new clinics in the NHS are all about. Specialist care with specialist psychologists and counsellors and doctors. That's what we want. We want to give that to these children to make sure that they're making informed choices later on in life.
You don't think that having these kind of services for thousands of British children, there are 6,225 British children on waiting lists for this country. You don't think that having these kind of clinics in itself validates this kind of transition, this kind of journey? What we should actually be trying to do is have interventions to prevent children wanting to change their bodies, change their minds, damage their mental health, perhaps forever.
Well, I think we need to be careful we're not slipping into the realms of conversion therapy there. But I think, if we try and parallel that with other services, for example, we wouldn't say that eating disorder clinics were there to make your eating disorder worse. We wouldn't say that mental health clinics were there to make your mental health worse. We wouldn't say that autistic services were there to make autistic symptoms and children worse. They're there to support these people. That's what the whole idea of the NHS is, to support people to have better lives.
Yeah, but you don't. If you present with bulimia or anorexia, you're not encouraged to maintain your route down, the path towards starvation and losing weight. You're encouraged to return to a normal, healthy state. What you're proposing, you help people help children, toddlers, who present or say or claim or think, or they've been coerced, who knows what, into thinking that they're transgender. And you're saying that the way to treat them is to encourage them and facilitate their transition, rather than trying to intervene and say, are you sure this is the right thing, to try and, if you like, put them on the right path?
Well, I think we need to be careful about what the right path is. But certainly the role of a counsellor or psychologist in a child's gender clinic would be there to do exploration, how to best live your life, how to, is your gender different? Is it the same? It's about exploration. It's not about preferring one outcome or the other. It's not about preferring that child who's saying, I am transgender. It's not about preferring that they are not transgender, i.e. that they are cisgender. And it's not about encouraging them to be transgender. It's about giving them the space with professionals to talk through, and for the families as well, really important.
OK, Dr. Helen Webberly, thank you very much for joining us on GBN tonight. Thanks for your time. Sometimes I feel a mixture of either a fossil or an alien who's landed on a planet, and I just survey the terrain and think, what on earth is going on? Toddlers transitioning. Well, you've certainly got your views on so-called trans toddlers. Let's go through a couple of them now. Judy says this: complete madness. Children of this age have no concept of gender. I feel the clinics would be better off investigating why the parents would entertain such notions. There is something quite disturbing about anyone who would wish to harm their child in this way. And Paula adds this: leave our toddlers alone. When is this madness going to stop? It breaks my heart, these poor little mites. Now, a spokesperson from NHS England told GB News this: the primary objective of the service for children under the age of 7 is to provide support and guidance to the parents stroke carers, rather than to initiate clinical interactions with the child. The appropriateness of a referral of a child under 7 would first be agreed by paediatric or mental health specialists and the new Children and Young People's Gender Services through pre-referral consultation. Now up next, a shocking new dossier